Many animals rely on the kindness of human beings in order to thrive. That's why it's so important for people to speak up when they witness the mistreatment of any animal. Unfortunately, being an advocate for abused animals isn't always so easy. When one journalist discovered the horrible mistreatment of an animal, he knew he had to stop it immediately. There was no way he could let such cruelty occur unchecked, but he had no idea just how hard he would have to fight to really make a difference. Namibian journalist John Grobler was visiting Angola for his job when he happened to pass by a private park in Huambo's southern region called Granja Port do Sol. It was there that he first saw a 4.5-year-old chimpanzee named Layla. Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these animal stories every day. Now, back to the story. The poor animal was in chains and needed help. I immediately saw this young chimpanzee who was chained between two trees and right next to the entrance in what looked to be very poor condition, John said. Nobody was really taking care of her. John began asking locals questions about Layla. He discovered that somebody had sold her to the park's owner when she was only an infant, most likely after her mother was sold for bushmeat. It was a tragic story, to say the least. Initially, Layla had been kept in a cage, but she was chained up shortly after she destroyed it. This, however, wasn't much of an improvement as she was constantly exposed to direct sunlight. Other than a tiny wooden table she could climb under, she didn't have any shelter. John said that even in such abysmal conditions, Layla was a fighter. She managed to fashion a makeshift bed for herself out of a small hollow in one of the trees, and she even found some sort of fabric on which to rest her head. Still, this was no way to live. Layla was forced to beg parkgoers for food to survive. Since the nearest vendors only sold items like pasta and fried foods, the starving chimp was given unhealthy scraps. Worse yet, she often had to drink her own urine to stay hydrated. According to John, the people in the park seemed to be nice to Layla, but there were signs she'd been physically harmed. She was obviously massively underfed and in bad condition, and she'd been hit over the head with a machete at some point, he said. John knew he had to leave Angola soon, but he was absolutely determined to save Layla, even if it meant going out of his way or spending a lot of money. The thought of leaving the poor animal in such a state was just unthinkable to him. I come from a line of people who love animals, so I saw this chimpanzee and I thought, I've got to do something about this, and I can't leave this just be, he said. But his journey to help her wouldn't be an easy one. While it's illegal to own chimps as pets in Angola, the country suffers from a great deal of corruption. This meant that going through the proper channels to get anything done was a challenge. John had the feeling he'd have to persuade a few of the right people to let him save Layla. John's first move was to get in touch with a Namibian woman named Daleen Dreyer, who was raising another orphan chimp named George at the time. She agreed to take care of Layla while John figured out what to do next. It only got more difficult from there. John was told that he could only remove Layla with a confiscation permit and needed to give her a rabies vaccination and a passport. Freeing Layla was proving to be tougher than he thought. The long list of bureaucratic red tape he had to cut through was already starting to look immense. It wasn't going to get any easier either. John would have needed to hire a carpenter to build her a transport cage, not to mention a driver. Miraculously, with the help of the Wild Heart Wildlife Foundation, John managed to raise the money necessary to save Layla. In the meantime, he brought her water, coconuts, and other healthy foods while she waited for rescue. John suspected that people may have tried to trick or even poison Layla in the past once he noticed that she wouldn't eat anything that she didn't see someone else eat first. She would not eat, for example, a cracker without me eating it first in front of her, said John. Not only was Layla locked away and completely neglected, but people had gone out of their way to try and cause her harm. It was unthinkable. After some waiting, it was finally time for Layla to be taken away. After years of abuse and neglect, Layla was moved to live with Daleen in Luanda, Namibia. By all reports, she was adapting quite nicely there. Layla would probably have to spend no less than a year with Daleen, but John hoped that Zambia's Chimpanzee Wildlife Orphanage would eventually take her in. From there, after a year or two, she could ideally return to the wild. "I think she will make it," said John. "She's a very bright one." It was no surprise that John struggled to say goodbye to Layla once he had to return home. He could sense that she knew he would be leaving her for a long time. "I picked her up and she just put her arms around me," said John. "She could see the bags, so I think she understood. He promised her that he'd come back soon for a visit. Hopefully that will happen sooner than later." If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with your friends and family. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.